Hey guys, this is going to be a short tutorial on how to set up a DevOps environment so we can actually spawn up some VMs with predefined applications. So basically we're going to have like a full stack VM and we're going to provision the VM using Ansible. So Ansible is going to be the configuration provisioner. As well as we're going to use Vagrant, and for the back end for the VM is going to be VirtualBox. Okay, so let's get started. Bring up my command prompt, and I'm on a Windows environment, but I'm going to create two VMs. One VM will be my control unit, and the other is going to be the actual web VM. Okay, so let me just go into my directory. So I have a directory called named code DevOps, and I'm going to make a directory, make dir. Let's call this VMs 01 cd VMs. Okay. Oops. And for this portion, what we would have to do, we would have to run a Vagrant init to initialize a Vagrant file. So basically that command Vagrant init will create a Vagrant file. We don't necessarily have to run that command. We can actually create the Vagrant file from scratch. But I've learned over the years that creating something from scratch, it tends to leads to errors. So let's go to Vagrant init, and from here we can just hit enter and we can just go and edit the file. But I would like to provide an extra value, so this portion is going to actually be the base system, right? It's going to be the actual OS that we're going to download from Vagrant Cloud. So that OS will be, or that box, it's a Ubuntu box, Ubuntu, and it's going to be trusty. Is it trusty 64? Now let's go with precise 64. So once you run that command, it's going to create the Vagrant file. Okay, so if you do a dir, you see we have that Vagrant file. So I'm going to open up my IDE, which is a Visual Studio Code. Navigate to the folder. What's that, code DevOps here? Okay, then we have that Vagrant file, and it's basically a Ruby syntax, a Ruby file, as you can see up here. So we can change it from plain text, and we could just change it to Ruby so it could look nice. There we go. As you can see, everything that's in green is basically commented out, right? So these everything that's in green will not be executed. But we are going to require some of this, right? Because we're going to want this VM to be in a private network. So we're going to look for private. Where are you? There we go. Private network. Uncomment that. What else? We are going to require the synced folder because we want to synchronize our Windows folder with the VM, right? So do that. And we want the type to be NFS because NFS is a lot faster when accessing shared folders over the network. Okay, so basically what this is doing is basically taking the root directory of, in this case, where the Vagrant file resides. So it's basically going into the path where we have the Vagrant file, which is here. So this is the root, which is the dot notation. And it's saying, okay, associate that, or basically create like a symlink to the Vagrant directory on the Linux side. Okay. what else? Let's get rid of some of these comments. So, and then from here, what we can do is defined, right? Because I think we're going to need, because we're going to basically have two VMs, right? So I think it's best to define the name for each VM, right? So config.vm.define, right? And the name of this one is going to be control, because that's the control. This is the first one that we can actually control the other computer, other VM. Control do, and then just control. Okay. And I like to do end it. Okay. So everything will go within there, right? So the only thing that will change is the config, right? Because we're no longer calling config. We actually named it control, right? So it's going to be control, right? Oops, control dot, yep, everything remains the same. And same thing for this guy, except as you know, it's not going to be control. I'm sorry, it's not going to be config, so it's going to be control. And then from here, I like to give it a name, right? Host name, control. Okay. And then we could get the synced folders. We can bring that up as well. Get rid of all this. Can control. Okay. And we can probably just take some of this down from here, because we're going to actually use the provider. Yeah, so I could take the provider, bring that in there, and then we're going to uncomment it. Okay. Then we don't need this comment. Tab it in. In fact, I don't need the GUI. I don't want the GUI. Okay. All right. So we basically given this VM 1 gig memory, and that's sufficient because we're not doing much with it. And let's customize the name of it, right? So it's going to be the actual name we provide into VM, right? Not the host name. It's the actual VM name that we're actually providing. So that'll be the same. It'll be vm.customize. And you could use customize as long with the memory, but this is a shorter way. VB memory is the shorter way of doing it. So and then this modify this command is basically VirtualBox command. Modify VM. Then we're gonna require the ID. Then give it the name, followed by the name of the unit or the VM, which is going to be control. Excuse me, and that should do it. So that's it for that portion. The only thing that we would have to do, let me see what's here. Well, I could take this because I could delete the rest. So we're gonna have to provision, right? So we're gonna use this because we are gonna run some commands, and it requires a shell. So we are gonna run some commands. So the control unit, we want to have Ansible, which is going to be our provisioner, installed, right? So I don't want to go into the VM and then manually do it. So let's go into the documentation. So basically we can just copy and paste the from the documentation. So that'll be Ansible installation. Okay, and look for your VM. I'm sorry, for your Linux flavor, which in this case I'm installing Ubuntu, so it'll be that one. And here we go. you just copy that commands and minus the dollar signs, and just get rid of the dollar signs, and that's it. Once we have this up and running, we have this, just make it look nice, and it's not required. And there we go. We have that one VM that's good to go. So we can do the same thing with the second VM. Do control. Wait, this is for this control unit, right? Yeah. So we don't need the shell. The shell is not required, so we could get rid of. We're not provisioning any software from Vagrant, right? We're gonna actually do it from Ansible, from this control unit. So the only thing we have to do is change the name, right? So I'm gonna call this second VM Web01. Oops, right? Web01, same. Everything remains the same. The IP address, change it. Host name, give it a Web01 or whatever you like. Web01. So we could have did a not okay. 1 second. Okay. So in here, obviously, we're going to change the controls, right? So Web01. This is one of the things I don't like for doing everything manual, but once you get it up and running, because doing it manually leads to user errors, right? Okay, and hopefully everything is fine. Okay, so this is closing this guy. Yep, and then this config is closing this config here. Let's bring this in. Okay, so it looks okay for now. Let's save that. And now, normally you would run Vagrant up, and what will happen? It's going to, if you don't have the this box precise 64, if you don't have it downloaded in your system, in your computer, it's going to download it. So that may take a while. But since I have the box already, because I ran this before previously, and I probably have a couple of boxes, and so you can check by running Vagrant box lists, and it's going to go through your system and it's going to see what you have. And I see I have the precise 64 as well as trusty 64. So from here you could just run a Vagrant up. So if there are no errors, it's going to basically create the VM, control VM, and then it's going to go and create the Web01 VM. So I'm going to hit enter and let it do its thing. Hopefully there are no errors. Okay, so at this point I'm going to pause the video, and I will return if there are any issues or when it's complete. Okay, so as you can see, it came back with some, not errors, but it required input from us, right? So it basically ran through the provisioning portion, this portion, and it requires input. Basically, do you want to continue, right? And since this we executed from within the shell script, we couldn't provide input, right? So it just aborted the execution. So let's just go in here and just automatically accept it, right? So we're going to say, okay, yeah, for each one of them. Just put Y for each one, okay? And that way, clear. That way we won't get prompted. We will not be prompted for, basically saying, is it okay to install this? Is it okay to do that? Automatically say yes to all four. Okay, run it. And once it kick off and when it's complete, I will return. And lastly, it seems like the where is it? right, Web 01. It seems like it's all being executed. It's running the basically the shell scripts. It's basically running the shell provisioner. So we don't want that, right? So I think the problem is because we have config here, it's and in that, and that's it shouldn't do it. I'm not sure why, but let's change the config. The config here, it's not config, right? Because we are within the parameters here, so we can name it control. Okay, save that. And so since the machine is it's up, right? So let's just do a vagrant provision. So it'll just take the changes that we already, that's the updates that we made on the file. So it's running through the provisioner. That's good. Okay, the only issue, I think it may have installed Ansible on this Web 01. So what we can do is you can actually destroy the VM and then recreate it again. But that's fine. I mean, it's not an issue. So we can test that. We can do a Vagrant status. See if the status of the two VMs, and there we go. We have control and Web 01. They're both running, and you see that the actual name of the units are the host name is control, and as well as a VM, right? So if we run VirtualBox, we will actually see that we have control and Web 01. That's the actual name of the VirtualBox. Otherwise, you're gonna have like some crazy string like up here. Okay, so we can actually test to see if we have a connection to from the control VM to the Web 01 VM, right? So we have the SSH, so we're going to do a Vagrant SSH into the control box. There we go, we're in the control box. And then from here, what we're going to do, so if I try to do a cat, just bear with me, known, see we don't have the file yet, we don't have the known hosts file yet, right? So that's when SSH, or the keys are going to be stored. So but in this case we don't have it. So in order to get that, we can do it in multiple ways, but the easiest way I've learned is just do a SSH, right? So we're going to SSH into the to that box, to the Vagrant. So we basically SSH into this one, 3311, right? So the user is Vagrant, and then we provide the host name or the IP address. That's it, and then we will accept it, and then we provide the Vagrant password, which is also Vagrant. Okay, so we're actually, as you can see, we SSH'd into the Web 01 box, so we can exit out of that. Okay, clear the screen. So we're back in the control box, as you can see here. So now if I was going to do a cat SSH, oops, right, and then known, and there you go, we have that. And this is that SSH key, that security information that we require, because Ansible, it communicates over SSH. So we can test that now. We can test it from we can do it directly here. Yes, we can. We can do it here, but well, let's just test it, right? Because there are going to be some issues when if we try to test it here, because we don't have a host file yet. But we can certainly try. So we can try, just let's, so you can see the error. So let's do an Ansible. Well, let's just make sure Ansible is installed on this machine. And yes, it is. We have 2.3.1. So from here, I could just run Ansible. And let's just do all, right? I just want all computers, right? All hosts within this environment. So, and then from here, I can just give it the module, which is going to be ping. So there it is. It's saying, wait, I have no idea what you're talking about, because as you can see, there's no host file. So we would have to create that host file, right? So let's do touch hosts.yaml. It doesn't necessarily have to be a YAML, but for that, I like, since Ansible, the playbook is a YAML file, I like to create the host file as a YAML file as well. Where are we? Can I do a refresh? It's not. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not. We'd have to go into the, because if I do a ls, this is, see, this is not the directory we want to be in. So I have to go into the Vagrant directory. And then if I could do a ls, you will see the Vagrant file. Because remember, we we actually listed, where is that Vagrant? Somewhere here. When we created a VM, we actually said, this is going to be the path right here. So whack Vagrant. So that's it right now. So now we can create the touch. We can create the host.yaml. And you see it popped up here as well on the Windows side. So it should be here. There we go. So from here, let me just create 3 dashes. This is to identify this is a YAML file. Again, not required. They just give it. They just name this. We can name this tic-tac-toe. It doesn't really matter what you name it, but it's going to matter when you call it from here. So from here, I'm just going to name it. And again, this host file, you can do it a lot of ways. You can create it groups. So basically, you can have web01, and then you can, which would be like this, webs, right? And then you can have a list of servers, and you can do a lot of things. But the simplest, we're not going to actually work within the host files. So we're going to work directly with the playbook file. So we just need this so we can actually have the SSH username and passwords, so we can actually authenticate to the other hosts. But for now, let's just keep it simple, right? So we're gonna call web01, right? And then we're gonna run the Ansible keywords. So it's gonna be Ansible SSH. So this first one is gonna be the host, right? 192.168.33, blah blah. Right, the next one, and then the host, and then you have the user, and then the password, right? So SSH user, which is Vagrant, Ansible, Ansible user SSH, pass, it's also Vagrant, and that's it. We're completely done with this file. So now, instead of calling all, right, what I can do is I can call the host file first, right? Doesn't necessarily be first. I could call the web01, because if let's just say I say web02, right? And they're saying, hey, what's web02? No hosts matched, right? So it has to be with the name we provided here, web01. And that's it. So we got the host file, we have the module, which is ping. So what's going to happen is going to look at our host file and it say, okay, what do you want to do? Which we're going to run the ping command on that host. And there you go. We received a successful ping, which is a ping pong. And you can see nothing was changed. It was just a ping. Okay. So we know we have a successful connection to that to web01. So that's good. Okay. So the next command, or the next thing we're going to do, is create a playbook, right? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to actually start installing, provisioning, software, provisioning the machine. So I'm going to touch it again. I'm just call it playbook. Again, you could call it whatever you want, but it is a YAML file. This is definitely a YAML file. Okay. There we go. 1, 2, 3. So from here, it's going to be pretty straightforward, right? We're going to provide the playbook a name, right? I'm going to just call it web01. Again, the host. And this one, I just want one host. I don't want, so which is web01. I mean, we could do all at this because this is all in the VM, so it really doesn't matter, but just really narrow it down, right, to make sure we actually working with one host. Become, yes. So basically, become is basically saying I want this user to become a root, a super user, a pseudo user. Okay, so that's basically what this command is. And then we have the tasks, right? So this is where we list all our tasks, right? So the first task, let's just say update the app cache, because we want to make sure that the playbook is running, that we actually can successfully run it, right? So update the cache, and then yes, please do. Okay, so let's test it as usual, because we don't want to be ahead of ourselves and it's not working, right? So Ansible, and it's in this case we're not just running we're not just running Ansible like the way we ran for the ad hoc commands. We actually running Ansible playbook. Okay, but and then everything remains the same, right? So we need the host, and then we just need the playbook, and that's it. We're not running any commands within that, so we just have the host. So the playbook would actually know how to communicate with this host right here. Okay, let's go. So right now it gathered, with the first task, it gathered the facts, right? So it's basically looking at the computer and seeing everything about it, right? We see everything about it, installed software, hardware, and virtual hardware and so forth, memory, So as you can see, there was one change right here, which was the update app cache. So that was successful. Now, if you was to run it again, of course it would change, because app cache is going to always run no matter what, right? It's not like it's a software install where it's going to install software and the next time you run it, it's going to reinstall the software. Whereas, Ansible, if you already have, it's going to go through the list, go through the tasks. It's going to go to the first task. It's going to run it. The second task, if you have that second task, if you have the software already installed, it's going to skip it. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to reinstall the software. So we can prove that once we get some more tasks. Okay, so next, let's give a space here. The next task would be install Apache, right? So this is going to be our first software, first package, Apache 2. And we're going to use the app, and in this case we're going to use name because we're going to provide it a name, right? Apache 2. So basically this is the same as you're right in the terminal and you're running this command here. You're running basically sudo app get installed Apache 2. So that's basically this command here. That's basically what we're doing. Okay. So install the Apache 2, and then you can put state after it. You can put state meaning you want the latest version, even though we put Apache 2, so you're probably going to get Apache 2 dot blah blah blah. But perhaps if we would just see Apache and then not including the latest version, you probably get a higher version. But I would like to be more specific. I would just say state, give me Apache 2, and then the state would be present, meaning I want this to be installed. Excuse me. Okay, so that's basically present, right? So like when you're in class, you raise your hand as you say present. You know, when you do roll call, same thing. So the state, if you want to uninstall it, you would put absent, right? So you want this software to be absent from the list. So it would go through the task, and then once it reached this, it would just uninstall Apache. Okay, save that, and then run it. So when we run it again, it's going to be, let's see if we could go up. Yeah, you see that was one change. If we run again, it's going to be two changes. There you go. It's going through the second task to install the Apache. And there you go. Two changes. So as I was saying before, if we run it again, it's going to be only one change, meaning it's going to go through here. It's going to always run to update the cache, because, you know, that's not it's not basically updating. It's actually doing something, right? It's updating the cache. So it's going to go through this one, and then it's going to go through this one, and be like, hey, wait, this is already installed. So it's going to skip that one, and it's going to stop, right? So right now it's 2. Let's run it again. So to prove it, it's going to just be one. It's going to make only one change to the system, right? It's not going to reinstall the Apache or even try to reinstall it. It identify that it was installed by running the facts here. Okay, so that's that for that. We ran the cache, we installed Apache. I'm sorry, we updated the cache, and then we installed Apache. Now, I had played around with this for a minute, and I tell you, I had a huge playbook where, I mean, that's nothing to brag about. I mean, that's not the most, you know, it could be problemsome when you have a huge playbook, when you're running a lot of doing a lot of things in one file, and it's not very modular, right? So what we can do, you can refactor this, right? We can break it apart, and we can have different roles for each package, right? So let's say this this right here, right? That's what we do. We have a few minutes. I'm about to stop the video, so I'm not going to install any more packages in this video. But what I will do, I will break it apart, right? So I'm going to put these two tasks in 2 separate roles. Okay, so time. Okay, all right. So what we would do is we would create directories for it, right? Normally there's a command you can run from here, but I'm not going to run the command. So the command, basically, when you run it, the Ansible command, it actually create the directories for you. But it's best, you know, we'll get to know how it's working just by doing it manually from scratch, right? So the first we got to do, you have to create roles, right? So I'm gonna create a roles directory. Okay, and within the roles, that's when you have each task. So this task here, update app cache, right? We could just say this is a general task, or it'll probably apply to other tasks if we need be, right? If we need it. So I'm just call it a folder called general. Okay, and then And then within each role, each role with module, if you like to call it that, there's a task. So there's always tasks, and there's going to be a task folder. And then within each task folder, there's a main file, which is a YAML file again. Okay, so basically the main file is basically going to be the same thing, right? It's going to be this, whatever we have here. We're going to have the name, except we're going to have the name of the application or the module we're installing, or the command we're running, and that's all. So we can cut this, right? And we can place it in the main. Let me just make sure it's a that's it. Yeah. Just make it aligned, and that's it. That's all you need. Boom. We save that, right? Save it. Okay, so the same thing. Now I'm sure you guys can do it on your own with the next one, right? The next one is Apache. We can call it Apache. We can call it web, whatever you want. So the next role, right? So it'll be a new folder, right? So let's call it Apache, right? Apache general tasks folder, task. Then we have the main file, main.yaml. Then you can just cut that out, right? So that's it. Save that, close it. So look how small it became, right? So the only thing we would have to do, obviously, is change it a little bit, right? So everything remains the same here. It's host, web, become, and then except there's no tasks. All the tasks is going to be within the roles. So what we're going to call it roles instead of tasks. Okay, and that's it. So we just have to just call each role, right? So the first one would be general, right? The next one would be Apache, right? Save that, and then as we create more roles, we just add it to the list. So that's that for that. We have it. So run it, Ansible playbook, and let's just see what happened. It's running the update. So obviously, look, you see general, it ran it. Apache, install Apache 2. One change was just the update the cache. So you see the names that we rolled, the roles that we called, we named it general, and here is running the task general. Okay, Apache is running the Apache task. So it's better that this way. It's more modular this way. So instead of putting everything, because believe you me, I have a huge playbook. I mean, it is good for learning and stuff, but this way, it's much easier for you to go in and you can look and you can say, okay, where's Apache? Oh, that's Apache. So you can go in, you can break it down, and you can see what's going on, based on the name of the roles. So the next thing, we would go down the full stack. We would create, install the MySQL, PHP, and all the related dependencies for the MySQL, Apache, and as well as PHP. Okay, so until the next video, bye-bye.